I'm Stephen A. Now we're number 2 of the Stephen A. Smith Show right here on ESPN Radio, coming at you as I love to do every weekday. Over the airways of ESPN Radio, 250-plus markets across the United States of America. And, of course, Sirius XM, ESPN Radio, Channel 80. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Home Insurance. Getting a quote is easier than ever before. Number to call up, as always, is 888-729-3776. That's 888-SAY-ESPN. Lots of stuff to get into in hour number 2, revisiting Charles Barkley attacking LeBron James, revisiting the conversation about the AFC NFC Championship games. R.J. Bell, our resident handicapper from pregame.com out of Vegas. He will be on the show with us in approximately 13 minutes or so. Of course, I'm going to get into a particular player that in the NBA that I don't believe is appreciated nearly as much as he should. And I will definitely touch on that in hour number 2, probably re-air my final take from First Take on ESPN today. So all of those things I'm going to get into as well, but not before I go to this story that I consider a non-story, but nevertheless, it's percolating over the national news wires and throughout the airwaves, and I have an obligation to give to you what people have deemed important, and that is the health status of Tom Brady. Now, I have been on the record stating I don't give a damn if he's in a sling handing out pizzas with his one good hand until Sunday at 3 o'clock. It don't matter to me. He's Tom Brady. He's going to be ready, and he's going to be just fine. But for some reason, there's a level of urgency that the national media has attached to Tom Brady, so much so that Tom Brady addressed the media just a few minutes ago, speaking about that injury, speaking about his status for this Sunday's AFC Championship game. So far be it for me to get in the way of what you all deem news, and that's the injury that I consider to be a bogus non-injury of Tom Brady. Listen to the 5-time champion speaking to the media just a few minutes ago.
I'm not talking about that.
Did you practice today?
I was out there.
For the whole practice?
Yeah.
How was practice?
It was fun.
How much are you looking forward to Sunday?
What's that?
How much are you looking forward to the opportunity Sunday?
It's a great challenge. I think the team's worked hard to get to this point, and it'll be a great game. Yeah, we're playing against a really good team that's good in all phases, and we're gonna have to play really well.
You have to be at the top of your game on Sunday to beat this team.
Absolutely. It's the best team we faced all year, and they're here for a reason. They obviously, are a top-ranked defense in the league, some great players at all levels, and, really well coached, scoring a lot of points. So we're going to have to play really well.
Tom, how confident are you that you will be playing on Sunday?
We'll see.
Does it worry you at all that you miss the practice when you have to get to the top of your game to play this game?
Yeah, I'd always rather practice. Yeah, absolutely.
Are you confident you'll be at the top of your game on Sunday, physically capable?
We'll see.
Would you mind reflecting a little bit on your relationship, your friendship with Josh McDaniels, how close you guys have been since you started working together, basically when you both got to the organization?
Yeah, he's been a great coach and a great friend, and I think he's so well prepared, gets me prepared every week. He's so diligent, and he's just a great coach. And, I've loved playing for him. I love working with him. And, we've had a lot of fun together.
Some people said that in practice, you and Matt Patricia go at it in a good way. Could you talk a little bit about that? That you give him a little bit of smack and you give it right back?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a lot of, there's a lot of that. So he's a defense coordinator, so try to keep things lively in practice and a little friendly competition and try to get everyone juiced up a little bit.
Why are you wearing gloves to the press conference?
I've worn them before.
When you're managing an injury, is it more of a functionality of holding, gripping, throwing, or is it pain management whenever you've dealt with injury in the past?
They're all different. It's football.
What exactly happened on Wednesday? The collision that you had with Keenan?
I'm not talking about it. Yeah. Is that it?
Is there anything you can share about the next couple of days? What will determine the status between now and kickoff?
I have no idea.
How much
similarity do you see in the Jaguars scheme with Seahawks in the past?
A little bit different. I think they definitely do some different things schematically, coverage-wise, front-wise. Players are a little bit different, so it's a very unique challenge. I think their front's great. Their linebackers are very instinctive, very fast, and great cover guys in the secondary. So ball-hawking defense, they strip it off you, they sack you. They scored, I think, 8 or 9 touchdowns this year on defense. So, they're a great defense.
Tom, why are you wearing gloves inside?
She already asked that.
Tom, you've been a high-five guy in the past. Is it safe to say that you're going to be a fist pump guy for the rest of the weekend?
We'll see.
You got an opportunity to see Brian Hoyer take first-team snaps yesterday. How did he look?
Brian, he's always looked good. Brian does a great job.
Have you worked with him to help prepare for the possibility that you might not play? Help prepare him to start?
I mean, we're in the same meetings every day. We're sitting right next to each other. So whatever I'm hearing or saying, he's hearing the same thing.
Have you played in a game in more pain than you're in right now?
I've played in a lot of games with pain, so.
Have you ever thrown the ball with gloves? Have you ever played a game in gloves?
It's been a long time.
You said in the past that you don't.
He said 2 questions. See ya. Thank you.
That was Tom Brady talking to the media. I got to admit to you, just listening to that, let me explain on one hand what because I think a lot of times people get caught up in you either for or against the media as a fan listening to something along those lines. Here's my thing, and I want to say this is separate and apart from Tom Brady because I had no problem with what I heard Tom Brady say today. Normally, I would have a problem, and here is why. I am one of those people who believes that the media nor anyone else has a right to know your personal business about your personal life. I don't give it. To me, you got a right to curse the media out if they came up to you asking you about your wife, your girlfriend, your mama, your family. Like when Tom Brady's mom, when we learned that she was ill, he had every right not to ever talk about that. That's their private, personal business, no matter what he was going through, because that affects a life beyond himself. Even in a situation like that, they may have had an effect on him emotionally as he was playing the game. That's still so personal that if he decided that he never wanted to talk about it, it's none of anybody's business. I know from experience with my mom. God rest her wonderful soul. I get that. I understand stuff like that. But I think that what you do as it pertains to your job, which the public patronizes by paying to see, whether it's live and in person or on television with NFL packages and beyond, I think if a player is injured, you have the right to know. I think if a player, how the player sustained the injury, you have a right to know. I think the status of a player, you have the right to know. I think you have a right to know all of that. Because that's strictly about the game. Here's where the exception comes in. Tom Brady trying to win an AFC championship game this Sunday. You don't need to give the Jacksonville Jaguars any more evidence than necessary about exactly what's wrong, because they could potentially use it against them. I do understand that. I do get that. And there are exceptions to that rule. Generally speaking, I got a problem. Let's say, for example, if a player got in trouble and he got, mired with a sexual assault charge or something like that, and a player gave a problem about asking a question about the sport, I'd be like, how's those charges coming along? How you dealing with it? Because that's my way of saying to them, would you rather talk about that or basketball or football in this case? I'm trying to ask you about the sport. I don't want to know about all of that. But since you don't want to answer about that, maybe I should get personal. That's my attitude. Because you should be able to ask them anything about the sport they're playing. But there are exceptions. And I thought that Tom Brady, being very unrevealing, I had no problem with it in this particular situation. He's about to go up against the Jacksonville Jaguars for the AFC Championship in a little more than 48 hours. He don't want to talk about too much. I don't blame him. Especially if he got to get out there and play. I don't blame him. I don't blame him one bit. 888-729-3776. That's 888-SAY-ESPN. That is the number to call, and I'll get back to your phone calls in a little bit, but not before I get to my resident handicapper out of Vegas. His name is RJ Bell, and he's up next with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio.
You're listening to the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio. Number to call up as always is 888-729-3776. That's 888-SAY-ESPN. It's my honor and privilege to have my next guest on the line. He's with me every Friday during the NFL season. He's done an outstanding job for us all year long. It will continue today. He is the founder for pregame.com, the official exclusive odds provider to the Associated Press. His Twitter handle is at RJ in Vegas. I'm talking about the great one, RJ Bell. He's right here with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio. What's up, buddy? How are you?
Thank you so much. Two good games. Very interesting games, Stephen A.
Yeah, I'm looking at stuff, just some general topics you have highlighted here for me, and I want to share it with my audience. It says here, you got topics here like famous better in action. What does that mean? What's that about?
You know, this was interesting. I'm not sure if we talked about it. During the World Series, there was a bettor that came to Vegas, and he started betting big money, and he let it ride every game, and he won every game up through Game 6, and then he didn't bet Game 7. So this guy won multiple millions of dollars. Well, since the World Series, he hasn't been in town. Well, just yesterday, I had a contact at one of the sports books. I got a report he made his first bet over $100,000 since the World Series, and it was actually on a UFC match, the heavyweight championship, and he has Ngannou as the favorite. He made a $100,000 bet on him yesterday, first bet since the World Series.
Wow. Another topic you had highlighted here was last week's amazing Vikings ending against the New Orleans Saints. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, because on one hand, as a fan of either team or just a fan of the NFL, what an amazing ending. Mm-hmm. What was a little bit even more interesting or additionally interesting was the extra point. Because after Minnesota scored the touchdown, they were up by 5 points. Well, as you could guess it, the point spread on the game was 5.5 points. But they had to kick the extra point. Right? So everyone that had Minnesota tickets are waiting, kick the extra point. Well, as you know, Stephen A., they came out Minnesota and knelt. They did not kick the extra point, and thus all of those Minnesota bettors lost. And if they would have just kicked the extra point, they would have won, and literally tens of millions of dollars around the globe swung on that one decision.
That's amazing, because I was absolutely positively disgusted that the NFL even made the Saints come back out onto the field so Minnesota could kick the extra point. I thought it deflated the moment. It got in the way. It really, really annoyed me, but that's a real interesting point that you bring up. We're talking to RJ Bell right here with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio. Talk to me about the conference title game history category.
Usually throughout the season, and we've done, 4 years now, I am an underdog bettor where pretty much 7 out of 10 times I'm going to like the underdog in a game. The reason is favorites oftentimes have questionable motivation. Yeah, they're an 8-point favorite. They want to win the game for sure, but they don't care if they win by 4, 7, 10. Thus, underdogs tend to do better. But in the playoffs, favorites tend to do better. Why? Because every favorite is totally motivated, right? Right now, New England, even though they're a significant favorite, you know they're going to play their very best, full effort, full focus. And history backs that up. Going back to 1978, way back then, in the conference championship games, the favorite is covered 58% of the time. So something to consider as we get to the games.
You want us to also consider the quarterback experience in all of this. Why is that?
Well, listen, anyone that's a casual fan can see Tom Brady has experience the other three guys don't in the playoffs, but the numbers are eye-popping, Stephen A. Tom Brady's career in the playoffs, 35 games, 66 touchdown passes. The other three quarterbacks combined, 5 games, 5 touchdown passes. And I would make the following point. If any quarterback other than Tom Brady wins the Super Bowl this year, so the other 3 teams other than the Patriots, it will be the least pedigreed quarterback in 15 years. Since Brad Johnson won the Super Bowl 15 years ago, any of these 3 other quarterbacks would be the least pedigreed to win a Super Bowl.
How does Vegas feel about my notion that if Tom Brady doesn't make it to this Super Bowl, it'll be some of the worst ratings in Super Bowl history we have seen?
I'm not a conspiracy theory guy, but I think this is worthy of consideration. Has there been a game in the last 10 years that had more impact on the bottom line than New England making this Super Bowl? Because we've all heard the media narrative. NFL is down 9% or so this year, TV ratings, down more than that over the last 2 years. Now, if it's Jacksonville versus either of these NFC teams, it would be one of the least interesting, you must say, for the casual fan, Super Bowls of the last 10 years. And thus, imagine if, Stephen A., it's like a 10 million viewer drop with Jacksonville versus whomever. Wouldn't that just feed the narrative in such a horrible way for the NFL? Thus, I think to the bottom line, the NFL is so motivated to have the Patriots in this game.
RJ Bell right here with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio. So let's get into the game. The New England Patriots favored by 9.5 hosting Jacksonville. And this is even with Tom Brady and his injured hand, RJ. What's going on with that? 9.5?
Yeah, and it's actually just recently dropped a little bit down to 7.5. And I just got 2 calls, and you know me, I never say, this is probably the first time I've ever said this on your show. I got 2 calls in the last couple hours from guys I really respect saying Brady's hand is hurt more than we think. And if you actually look at the betting odds, they're dropping and moving towards 7. So my sense is, and you never know about, even if it's from 2 sources, right? You never know. But my sense is we're going to hear in the next day or so that Brady is going to be more limited than we thought. Now, I think he's still going to play.
I don't believe it. I don't believe it.
You don't?
I don't believe it, not even. I think it's the biggest bogus story. I mean, this is just how I feel. I believe that the worse Brady is, the less we'd be hearing about it. Because I think Bill Belichick would do everything he could to keep that under wraps. I think the fact that this story is gaining legs and it's percolating even more, I think that gives me every indication that this is bogus. It's not nearly as serious as people are trying to make it.
But I agree with you that whatever Brady and Belichick say, we should probably think the opposite. But how do you hide missing practice? When someone missed multiple practices, how do you hide that?
Well, it's not a matter of that. Sometimes you go like this. All right, I'm a little hurt, but you know what? He could use the rest. He can relax because Jacksonville's going to put some heat on you now. They're going to put some heat on you. You understand? So to me, getting himself, his mind ready and his body massaged to the point where it's at 100%, I think that's more important than reps right now. But Jacksonville.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Stephen A., but historically, has Tom Brady ever sat out practices before conference championship games?
That's true, but I'm not saying that there's nothing that happened. I'm saying that it's being overblown. That's what I suspect.
And that's what I suspected even 4 hours ago. And again, I'm not saying I'm sure, but I would be willing to bet you a hoagie sandwich that we're going to find out that he's more hurt than we thought.
All right, we could do that. RJ Bell right here with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio. Last game to get into, we got to get into the NFC Championship game between the Eagles and the Minnesota Vikings. Talk to me about that one. What's the spread on that game, and where do you stand with it? Where does Vegas stand with it?
Minnesota on the road, favored by 3 points, a field goal. The line was 3.5.
Right.
So the money's been on Philadelphia, and this is what we call a pros versus Joes game. The pros are on Philadelphia. The Joes, the average bettors, are on the Vikings. I think the real story of this game is how much flatness can we expect out of Minnesota? And let me ask you what you think, because the reality is in the playoffs, you expect every team to be fired up, fever pitch, but off a game that was a true miracle win, do you think Minnesota's a little flat?
I think they will be, but that's also because I don't think offensively that they're very good. I think defensively they will be ready, and it'll be a nail biter, but I'm not a believer in Case Keenum like so many people have grown to be. I'm just not there.
And I think with Keenum, if you look at just this year, if that's the only data we had, second best QBR. ESPN's number is the QBR, second best Keenum. If you look across his career, this is a backup. So I think that question really is the question. And the last thing I would say about this is I think Philadelphia answered so many questions last week. Because entering it, we didn't know how Foles would play because, quite frankly, since he replaced Wentz, he didn't play well at all. He underperformed in the regular season. So we had big questions about Foles and, quite frankly, big questions about the rest of the organization because the Eagles hadn't won playoff games for quite a while. The fact that they played as a 3-point underdog against Atlanta, Foles played well, and they won the game. Now they're a 3-point underdog again. Psychologically, they just have to do what they've already proven they can do. I think that win helps Philadelphia a ton, and I do lean towards Philly in this game, +3.
So you're leaning towards Philly. Who are you leaning towards with Jacksonville and New England?
Ooh, I tell you this. I mean, even a couple hours ago, I really liked New England in this game. So I'm going to go with the under. There's the over-under total number of points. I think if Brady's hurt, New England can still play well, but they're going to be more conservative. So I think it's going to be a low-scoring game, would be my opinion. And the total is about 46. So I expect it to be less than 46 points.
But you're picking New England?
I would, to win the game for sure.
Okay, so it's Tom Brady in New England versus Philadelphia Eagles, in your estimation, a rematch of the Super Bowl in Jacksonville.
That'd be a good game.
We'll see. Thanks a lot, RJ. Appreciate you, buddy.
Thanks, Stephen A.
Thanks a lot. The one and only RJ Bell, founder for pregame.com, the official odds provider for the Associated Press. His Twitter handle is @RJ in Vegas. He's our resident handicapper right here on the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio, 888-729-3776. That's 888-SAY-ESPN. Back to your calls in a minute. You're listening live to Stephen A. on ESPN Radio.
Guess what? You're in the middle of the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Damn it, I mean it! The Stephen A. Smith Show. No matter what the weather is outside, you can always brighten the day with 1-800-Flowers.com. When you order a dozen multicolored roses for only $29.99, you'll get another dozen absolutely free. So go to 1-800-Flowers.com/ESPN, please. 888-729-3776 is always the number to call into the Stephen A. Smith Show. That's 888-SAY-ESPN. Before I get back to the calls, I got two things that I need to address. Number one, the Oakland Raiders were found in compliance with the Rooney Rule by the NFL. For those of you who don't know, the Rooney Rule is a rule that mandates that NFL teams need to interview minorities. Rooney Rule is a National Football League policy that requires league teams to interview minority candidates for head coaching and senior football operations jobs. It is sometimes cited as an example of affirmative action, though there is no quota or preference given to minorities in the hiring of candidates. This is what they say about it. Okay? And it was established in 2003, for those of you wondering how long it's been in play. Here's what annoys me about that. There was never an issue as to whether or not the Oakland Raiders had violated the Rooney Rule. We all knew that Reggie McKenzie, the general manager, who happens to be black for the Oakland Raiders, had interviewed minority candidates. The issue was, why the hell didn't you publicize it? Meaning publicize them. Because the objective was to make sure that minority candidates get looked at. Now, I know some people sit there and say you don't want to be some dog or pony show, and you don't want to just be paraded out there, every time somebody wants to interview you, and as a result, you just somebody that's used as a prop. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying I understand that sensitivity, but it's important to recognize that part of the need for the Rooney Rule was so guys would come out of the dark and folks would get an opportunity to know them and identify themselves with a particular minority candidate's work. And us knowing who they are would be very, very helpful. Reggie McKenzie knew this. John Wooten knew this. John Wooten said himself, the Raiders were never in violation of the Rooney Rule. That was never an issue. The issue was it right for you to keep those interviews in the dark just because you knew that John Gruden was going to get the job? The answer would be yes, because it's John Gruden getting the job. You know that you're not going to be a candidate, but it's still important. In instances like that, ladies and gentlemen, if it were not for John Gruden, this is the person we would think about hiring right here. And the Raiders didn't do that. And that to me was problematic. But we could touch on that another day. Another item that I wanted to touch on was Damian Lillard for the Portland Trailblazers. He got snubbed yet again. He's not an all-star starter, and that's understood. He ain't Steph Curry, he ain't Russell Westbrook, he ain't James Harden. We got that. But Damian Lillard averaging 25 points per game. Damian Lillard would miss the big shot big time. I went on the air today, and I called for him to demand to be traded. Because my argument was, playing in the Pacific Northwest, he doesn't get any love. And the Portland Trailblazers, with their sensitive selves, tweets out, somebody's always looking for attention. First of all, I don't need any more attention. I have a national television show. 2 hours live every day, plus a national radio show. 2 hours live every day. Secondly, and more importantly, the big problem is this. Why the hell do I get Damian Lillard more attention than the Portland Trailblazers do? Maybe if y'all want a little bit more, maybe if you marketed him a little bit better, maybe if you done a little something extra, Damian Lillard would get the love that he deserves. This brother hits big-time shots. He's great under the clutch, in the clutch, rather. He's averaging 25 a game. He's a career 22-point-per-game scorer. And Lonzo Ball is getting 30,000 more votes than him. Because Lonzo Ball is in a big market. I wasn't trying to cast any aspersions on the Portland Trailblazers. I was saying you're in the 22nd largest market, which is Portland. Lonzo's in number 2, L.A. Plus he's got a daddy that bloviates about him. And Lonzo Ball, who ain't on Damian Lillard's level by a long shot, gets 30,000 more votes. You know why? Because he's in L.A. wearing that purple and gold. That's why. Could y'all imagine if Damian Lillard was in the New York market? Could you imagine if the New York Knicks had Damian Lillard? Could you imagine? Or if the Lakers, instead of having Lonzo Ball, they had Lillard. Could you imagine what a star he would be? We all know the answer to that question. I'll leave it at that. I could go on the Portland Trailblazers, but I know a few people within that organization. I like them. I'm not going to go there. And the great citizens of Portland, Oregon, there's no aspersions, casting any aspersions towards you. Mad respect, great sports town. But if Damian Lillard was in a bigger market with a more recognizable franchise, this would not be an issue. I stand by that. Not intending to hurt anybody's feelings, but I stand by that. Your calls to close out the show in a minute. You're listening live to Stephen A. on ESPN Radio.
Guess what? You're in the middle of the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Damn it, I mean it! Back to the phones before we get on out of here. It's Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio. Let's go to Sabrina in Massachusetts. You're live with Stephen A. Going on. How you doing, Sabrina? How's everything?
I'm good, Stephen A. How are you?
I'm
Thank
doing
you
all
so
right.
much for taking my call.
No problem. Go ahead.
Wait, must I say that I love you and I love your show? Love
Thank
First Take, all of that. Much props to you.
Thank you so much.
Now, I agree 100% with this fake news from the past. I was saying it, my husband and I were saying it as soon as they started. We was like, okay, they just spraying perfume right now. You know, I agree 100% with this. I think Brady gonna come out Sunday and do Brady. I agree 100%.
I agree. Thank you so much. You know I love the fact that you agree with me, Sabrina. You know I love that. What's your hubby's name?
His name is Tyrone.
Tell him I said what's up.
Yeah, I will tell him. Can I touch on the NBA with LeBron real quick before we hang up?
Please do. Go ahead.
Okay, I believe that all of them really are crybabies, not just LeBron. Because if they came up in the old school days of playing basketball, they all would be crying. This whole thing with the NBA and the refs and the fouls and all that, I think they all would be crying, especially if they went up against the bad boys of Detroit. They all would be crybabies right now, but much sad. But that's all right. That's all right.
All right. Thank you so much. You have a wonderful weekend. Let's
you
go to
too.
Chris.
Thank you, Stephen A.
No problem. Let's go to Chris in L.A. You're live with Stephen A. Talk to me, Chris.
Hey, Stephen A., 2 quick points real quick. I don't necessarily agree with what Charles Barkley had to say about LeBron being a drama queen, but one thing that sticks out with me regarding LeBron is that he goes to an organization that gives him everything he wants, whether it's swapping out a coach, adding players, whatever the case may be, and he still feels the need to go elsewhere. That's one thing that sticks out. I don't believe Kobe would ever do that. You give him the horses, Kobe's going to go out there and do the best he can to compete and win without throwing this organization.
But if that's how you feel, then that validates what Barkley's saying, because that may be the reason why he said what he said.
Okay. Oh, well, yeah, I agree. Well said. And real quick, I have a question. I was reading ESPN article about Kemba Walker potentially being on the trading block.
Yeah.
Where do you feel is the best fix? I believe it's
New York.
Stephen A. I don't believe they have it. Oh,
New
okay.
York.
Okay.
New York. I mean, I'm not sold on Ntilikina. I'm not. I'm just not. He's a solid player. He's long. He can defend. But he's no threat offensively at all. And I need more in New York. I just do. I appreciate the call, man. Thank you so much. Let's go to Christine. You're live at Stephen A. on ESPN Radio. How are you doing, Christine?
I am doing well, kind sir. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for calling.
First, I have to say I've loved you forever. I love your verbal assassinry. It's a wonderful thing.
Thank you so
Absolutely.
much. Thank you.
But I think that you're deluding yourself a little bit if you think that this Brady story is overblown, because there are people looking at his thumb and looking at the size of the shape of the thumb. There's something going on underneath that glove. And I think they're putting this out there in case they lose so that they can have a little bit of spin and PR control. I'm not saying they're going to lose. I'm not saying that I think that that's going to be a huge factor, but I think you need to take it just a little more seriously than you are.
I will do no such thing, Christine. I have to see it to believe it. I have years upon years of history of watching Brady perform great, okay? And I don't believe Sunday's going to be any different. And I firmly believe, Christine, that if this was more serious, we'd know less, because it's Bill Belichick we're talking about. We'd know less if it was more serious. That's why I don't believe it. That's why I believe the story is bogus, and I will not change my mind on this. But I will be here Monday, Christine, if there is a need to correct me by yours truly. So feel free to call back, and thank you so much for calling. I really appreciate it. Rudy in L.A., you're live at Stephen A. Real quick, Rudy, go ahead.
Hey, Stephen A. You just now touched on Damian Lillard.
Yep.
And I completely agree with you. He's averaging 25 points. He is a baller, man. And I will never understand why he keep getting snubbed for these all-star teams. And I know they just announced the reserves, not the reserves, but the starters.
Lonzo Ball. I can understand him not being a starter, but Lonzo Ball got 30,000 more votes than him. Lonzo Ball. How does that make sense?
That's sad. And then another thing I want to point, isn't that up to is it the Portland fans supporting him enough? Or?
Well, listen. They may not have enough fans to support him. You know, you got more people in L.A. than in Portland. They may not have enough to support him. But the bottom line is this. The fact is that he deserves more support and more love than he is receiving. And it's a damn shame. And that's why I said what I said. But I appreciate the call, Rudy. Thank you so much. Let's go to Mike in Denver. You're live with Stephen A. Talk to me real quick, Mike.
I'm just touching on Tom Brady injury as well. You know ain't nothing wrong with him, man. And I believe New England going to blow him out tomorrow. Like you said, it'll be a tragedy without Tom Brady in the Super Bowl.
Listen, man, we can't afford to. Listen, I've never rooted for Tom Brady in my life stronger than I'm rooting for him right now. We cannot have a Blake Bortles versus Nick Foles or Case Keenum Super Bowl. That cannot happen, Mike. It cannot happen.
That's right.
And there's nothing. And I appreciate the call, Mike. Let's talk Monday. Enjoy the weekend. There is nothing that me, nor you, nor football lovers out there, nor NFL lovers out there has done to deserve what we're on the verge of getting. There must not be a Blake Bortles versus Nick Foles, Case Keenum Super Bowl. There must not be, especially with everybody having an elite defense. Jacksonville, Philadelphia, Minnesota. Tom Brady's the only hope there is for an interesting Super Bowl. He's holding the NFL in the palm of his hands. Let's go, Tom Brady. Talk to y'all Monday. Peace.